Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Baskerville Drummond at Home. Today we are going to talk Microsoft 365, which is why I have Nigel Stott with me, our go-to man for all things Microsoft. Hello, Nigel.
Hello.
Now, I was going to open proceedings with a how might Microsoft 365 change the legal system landscape question, but I realise I need to change that really to how is Microsoft 365 changing the legal system landscape, as there's plenty of interesting stuff already happening, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right, Sarah. I think we're seeing the legal system, the legal sector, being changed across three key areas, and that would be the way we communicate, the way we collaborate, and the way we share information. So, a really good example of that is how reliant on paper some law firms used to be until quite recently. So, whether that was creating bundles, submitting medical records, or showing other types of information, I was still seen amongst law firms large swathes of paper being used and sent by courier or Royal Mail. But I think with the ubiquitous nature of Microsoft OneDrive, given how easy it is for each VNer or support team member to access that technology, we're now seeing a huge move across to electronic transfer of documents. Because the technology is now more universally accessible, people find it easier to interact with this new Microsoft 365 technology. And I think we're now also seeing new applications coming into the legal marketplace, matter management and document management products that are actually built on top of the Microsoft 365 stack. So we are seeing now these larger moves within the legal sector using this Microsoft 365 tech.
So, how are SME law firms typically using Microsoft 365?
I think the typical adoption process we see in law firms at the moment is where they're moving their email from traditional on-premise or private cloud hosted email servers to Microsoft 365 Exchange Online email service. From there, they start to use other Microsoft 365 applications depending on the type of subscription they have. So they'll start to use things like Microsoft Teams for video conferencing, audio calls. They'll start to use OneDrive, like we've mentioned, for transferring documents. And they also use the latest versions of the traditional applications such as Word, Excel, and Outlook. But the truth is, that's just scratching the surface of what Microsoft 365 is really capable of. And the best way to think about Microsoft 365 is almost as an ecosystem of tools and applications that can help us secure data, improve business processes, and just help us to work more efficiently. So, if you're running a project, you have access to applications like Microsoft Planner. If you're looking to do asset tracking, you can use Microsoft Lists. There's a lot of allocation of hot desks and meeting rooms going on at the moment. So you can use tools like Microsoft 365 Power Apps to create applications to manage that booking process. Um, Even down to things like producing expenses forms with approval processes. Again, you can use Microsoft 365 technology to do this. So I think there's this wealth of technology that's available to firms, but they're not quite tapping into what's available there at the moment.
Okay, so what are the barriers to better exploitation? Is it just a matter of time and upskilling?
Um, I think it's partly that, Sarah, but I think the thing about Microsoft 365 technology is it is really easy to delve straight into. But what I would recommend is that firms need to think first of all about how they want to use this kind of technology, and that's a case of getting out into the business and identifying the use cases where Microsoft 365 can be used. So it's looking at those opportunities, and whether that's improving current business processes, whether that's enabling your FNS to be more efficient, that's a place that you need to start. But I think secondly as well, you've got to think very carefully about the licensing. So the applications available within Microsoft 365 become accessible based on the kind of subscription you have. But beyond that, for applications such as Power Apps and Power BI, there are other licensing methods that you need to use in conjunction with those subscriptions. And what it can mean is if you don't deploy these applications in the right way, or you don't look carefully enough at the licensing models, then in actual fact, deploying these applications can become quite costly. So you do need to calculate the licensing cost up front. And I think the other thing to consider as well is security. Again, it's really easy to get on and start using applications like OneDrive and SharePoint to share data. But there's various ways and various security mechanisms that can be applied when it comes to sharing that data. So you really need to think carefully about not just how you use this technology, but some of the other factors around licensing and security that make up part of it as well.
So in terms of better exploitation of Microsoft 365, could you share with us your top practical use cases?
Yeah, I can, Sarah. I think the first thing to focus on is with GDPR, we're now seeing an increase in requests for data. So subject access requests are coming into firms from clients, from ex-employees. And Microsoft 365 has a tool available called Advanced e-discovery. So this makes the process of gathering data for those types of requests much more straightforward. And the additional benefit of advanced e-discovery is the fact that it doesn't just search through or doesn't have to just search through the data in the Microsoft 365 environment. You can take data from other sources and plug that data into Microsoft 365 for that to be searched as well. So that's an excellent tool to use in those types of situations. I think the second use case is management information, business intelligence reporting, call it what you like, in law firms has sometimes been a challenge. And specifically when we're trying to deliver dashboards for fee earners so they can see at a glance key KPI metrics. So for example, that might be time recording, that might be things like fees delivered, fees received, and being able to give the fee earners some kind of visual representation of where they are against target. There's all sorts of tools available out there, but they can be quite difficult to use. Microsoft 365 has a really good application called Power BI that allows users to really easily create dashboards to present those kind of metrics to the fee earners. And they can be viewed on mobile devices as well as computers and laptops as well. And I think the final use case I've seen adopted in a few different situations is using Power Apps, which again is another Microsoft 365 application, to create resource booking systems. So the current situation at the moment means that, for example, desks have to be booked out when people want to go into the office. Well, Power Apps can be used to create a really straightforward resource booking system, so we can book out hot desks, meeting rooms, whatever it is, all through the Microsoft 365 interface.
And what about sort of, new solutions for old problems? So tackling the internet, for example.
Yeah, so the internet is one of those tools law firms have largely adopted, but quite often that's meant going to a third-party provider, paying sometimes tens of thousands of pounds to implement an intranet. Again, through Microsoft 365, using the SharePoint application, an intranet is actually really straightforward and easy to deliver out of the box. Another good example of a traditional application that firms sometimes went out and spent a lot of money on is the expenses application. So the process of going through, gathering all your expenses, entering them into some kind of system and submitting them to the accounts team. Those solutions could be quite expensive, but again, using Power Apps and templates provided by Microsoft, you can easily build an expenses application for your firm.
So, final question, Nigel. Pandemic notwithstanding, where do you see Microsoft 365 and legal in 12 months' time?
Well, I think if you look at Microsoft 365 in isolation, first of all, Microsoft are investing huge sums of money in developing the applications available within Microsoft 365. So almost on a daily basis, we're seeing advancements in the functionality available to us. We're seeing new Microsoft 365 applications being made available. But I guess the question is really how ready are law firms to adopt that new technology? And I think that's where the challenge is sometimes. Like I've said before, it really is a case of getting out into the business, identifying those use cases, and then looking at what's available in the Microsoft 365 stack that can be applied to meeting those demands and those pain points to deliver efficient, easy to use applications to the fee earners and support teams.
Thanks, Nigel. If you'd like to talk to Nigel directly, then please feel free to email him here. And don't forget to check out our other Baskerville Drummond at Home episodes, which you can find here. That's all for now. See you next time.